Imagine a jet so advanced it needs no pilot, but flies alongside the F-35 and F-47, acting as both partner and force multiplier. Meet the YFQ-42A, the Air Force's first collaborative combat aircraft CCA, fighter drone, a prototype that's rewriting the rules of air dominance. But this isn't just another aircraft in the Air Force's lineup. It's about to change aerial warfare as we know it. Part 1. Until now, most Americans had never heard of the Collaborative Combat Aircraft Program. Inside the Pentagon, it had become one of the highest priority initiatives in years, but almost everything about it was kept quiet. The design, the testing, and even the official designation of the prototypes. For over a year, industry and Air Force teams worked behind closed doors, pushing forward at a pace that looked less like the traditional 20-year fighter cycle and more like a wartime sprint. That sprint culminated on August 27, 2025, when the world saw the aircraft for the first time. The jet that appeared was unlike the drones people are used to seeing. Its silhouette looked closer to a manned fighter than to the long-winged MQ-9 Reaper or RQ-4 Global Hawk. It had no cockpit canopy, but everything else about the shape sent a different message. Smooth blended surfaces, carefully canted tails, and an inlet arrangement that suggested stealth discipline. The body was compact, clean, and clearly built for jet performance, not propeller-driven endurance. The Air Force assigned it the designation YFQ-42A. The Y signals that this is an experimental prototype. The Q marks it as an uncrewed aircraft, and 42 places it within the Air Force's sequence of fighter programs. That detail matters. By giving this aircraft a fighter-style designation, the Air Force was telling the world that this is not another support drone. It is meant to operate inside contested airspace as a combat partner to crewed aircraft. The contrast with legacy drones could not be sharper. The MQ-9 Reaper, for example, carries external stores under wide straight wings, optimized for long loiter at medium altitude. It is effective in permissive environments, but vulnerable in any fight against modern air defenses. By comparison, the YFQ-42A has stealth shaping, a high subsonic jet engine, and likely internal carriage bays for weapons or sensors. This is why the stakes are so high. For adversaries like China and Russia, the first flight of YFQ-42A means the US is on the path to fielding formations that multiply combat power without multiplying pilot risk. A single F-35 flying into contested territory with 2 or 3 YFQ-42, as under its command suddenly represents not one aircraft but a small package, multiple sensor apertures, multiple weapons bays, and multiple targets that an enemy air defense network has to track and attempt to defeat. The psychological impact is just as important. In Beijing and Moscow, planners who have relied on sheer numbers of aircraft and missiles must now factor in that the US can generate its own version of mass without the bottleneck of pilot training pipelines or the extreme costs of fifth-generation fighters. The YFQ-42A signals a shift from quality alone to quality plus quantity, and it does so with an aircraft that has already proven it can fly. The first clear images of the YFQ-42A show a silhouette that leaves little doubt about intent. It does not share the wide, straight wings, external stores, and pylon-laden shapes of drones like the MQ-9 Reaper. Instead, it resembles a stripped-down fighter, sleek blended body, carefully angled surfaces, and an inlet placement that minimizes radar signature. Everything about the external form suggests it was shaped with low observability in mind. The fuselage lines are smooth and continuous. The control surfaces are canted. The engine intakes are tucked in to shield the compressor face from radar. The tail geometry and overall proportions signal that this jet is built for survivability in contested airspace, not for long loiter over uncontested skies. Size also matters. The YFQ-42A is large enough to carry meaningful payloads, but compact enough to keep costs under control. Analysts point to modular internal bays as a design choice. These allow the aircraft to carry sensors, electronic warfare packages, or weapons inside the body, rather than hanging them on external pylons. That approach preserves stealth and lets each aircraft be configured for a different task, depending on the mission. Forward sensing one day, strike or jamming the next. Performance is another differentiator. The YFQ-42A is a jet aircraft. That alone sets it apart from the legacy medium altitude, long endurance drones that relied on propellers and slow cruise speeds. With jet thrust, this aircraft can match the pace of modern fighter formations. Its structure and aerodynamics hint at ambitions beyond simple cruising flight. The Air Force has signaled it wants CCAs capable of high subsonic maneuvering and potentially high G handling, so they can remain relevant inside a dynamic battle space. This design shift is not cosmetic. It opens mission profiles that drones could never touch before: escorted penetration into defended airspace, forward sensing under stealth discipline, and even controlled participation in air-to-air combat. The YFQ-42A's very form factor is a message that this is not a support asset circling outside the fight, but a combat system built to stand inside it. Part 2. The C in CCA stands for collaborative, and that word is central to understanding the YFQ-42A. This aircraft is not an oversized RC airplane, and it is not a runaway artificial intelligence making combat decisions on its own. It is built to operate as part of a team under the command of a human pilot, while executing tasks at machine speed. In practice, collaboration means the human flight lead sets the intent and the boundaries, and the YFQ-42A acts within that guidance. It maintains formation, processes information, and executes maneuvers far faster than a human could, but it does not act outside the pilot's command authority. When it comes to lethal decisions like firing weapons, the machine requests approval, the human grants it, and the engagement unfolds at machine speed. 3 examples make this clearer. First is deconfliction and geometry. A pilot flying in a dense formation doesn't have to micromanage throttle and stick inputs for each CCA. The YFQ-42A can hold its station, adjust intercept angles, and maintain the protective bubble around its lead aircraft automatically. This frees the human to focus on tactics, not flight path babysitting. Next is sensor tasking. A manned fighter cannot look everywhere at once. The YFQ-42A can be tasked to sweep its infrared sensors or radar across parts of the sky the pilot cannot cover, feeding back clean, track quality data without adding emissions risk to the lead jet. In practical terms, it extends the human's vision while maintaining stealth discipline. There's also weapons employment. When ordered to engage, the YFQ-42A can manage the complex timing of a missile shot and launch from standoff ranges that keep the manned aircraft out of danger. The drone absorbs the immediate risk, while the human preserves stealth and survivability. This is the essence of the human-machine balance. The pilot is the quarterback, calling plays, setting intent, and deciding when lethal force is authorized. The YFQ-42A is the wide receiver, reading the defense and running the route faster than any human can. The payoff is simple but powerful: machine speed plus human judgment. The YFQ-42A exists to solve a fundamental problem. The US Air Force has some of the most advanced fighters in the world, but not enough of them. 5th-generation jets like the F-22 and F-35 are highly capable, but they are also expensive, limited in number, and tied to a finite pilot pipeline. A peer conflict would demand not just quality, but quantity and persistence. Collaborative combat aircraft are the solution to that gap. They provide capacity on demand, extra missiles without extra cockpits, extra sensors without extra signatures, and additional airframes that can absorb risks where humans should not. A single fighter with 3 or 4 YFQ-42s can operate like a mini package, one drone acting as a forward picket, another as a decoy, a third as a jammer, and a fourth delivering weapons. For an adversary, this complicates targeting priorities and saturates defenses. They cannot easily distinguish which aircraft in the formation carries the critical sensors or which one has live weapons. For US commanders, the effect is leverage. A single squadron covers more airspace, presents more dilemmas, and sustains pressure longer than a purely manned force could. This is why affordable mass is the strategic refrain. The Air Force doesn't just want exquisite technology, it wants numbers it can actually buy, maintain, and field in wartime. The YFQ-42A demonstrates that the path to such mass is real and flying. Part 3. The YFQ-42A is not just a test jet, it is built around clear operational concepts. 3 vignettes illustrate how it would be used in combat. Forward sensor picket. A 2-ship of stealth fighters holds emissions discipline deep inside contested airspace. 2 YFQ-42s push 40 to 60 miles ahead, using passive infrared and low probability of intercept links. They detect and triangulate hostile aircraft without broadcasting, sending track quality data back to the manned fighters. When a threat appears, the pilot decides either he fires or he authorizes the CCAs to do so. Stand-in SAM busting. Against a layered surface-to-air missile belt, CCAs are the first to move. One flies a seduction route to draw radar emitters active. Another deploys a standoff jammer effect. A third carries compact anti-radiation weapons. Together they open a temporary gap. The manned strike package times its ingress for that window, with the drones having absorbed the risk of the initial move. Air-to-air massing. A mixed adversary package approaches, fighters plus bombers. The manned lead aircraft maintains stealth and conserves endurance. YFQ-42A fan outward, creating flanking geometry. Two unmanned wingmen launch missiles simultaneously, while the human lead holds long-range weapons in reserve for surviving threats. The drones take the early shots and the higher risk, preserving the manned fighters as the decision makers. Each scenario highlights the same theme. Command resides in the cockpit, risk shifts to the drones. The YFQ-42A extends reach, multiplies firepower, and adds resilience to formations that would otherwise be too thin. The program is not just about tactics, it is about production. The Air Force deliberately structured CCA around two vendors, General Atomics and Anduril, competing in parallel. This competitive pressure compresses timelines, enforces pragmatic designs, and provides options if one path stumbles. Crucially, these are not one-off demonstrators. The YFQ-42A is a production representative prototype, built with the same logic, structures, and processes that would be used for series production. That means simplified structures for repeatability, common wiring backbones for modular payloads, and open software architectures that update more like apps than traditional aircraft programs. The economics follow from that design. The Air Force has emphasized that the goal is not a boutique drone that costs as much as a fighter. The aim is a scalable airframe that delivers useful combat capability at a fraction of the price, one that can be bought in hundreds rather than dozens. Quantity without fragility. That is the guiding principle. By linking the aircraft's design to mass production from the start, the program signals that this is not just a technology exercise. It is an operational capability that the Air Force intends to field quickly, at scale, and with options to adapt as missions evolve. But credibility means being honest about limits as well as breakthroughs. The YFQ-42A is not a miracle weapon, and the Air Force has been upfront about that. Early prototypes are expensive, and the unit cost will only bend downward if production reaches real volume. No single configuration can maximize every trait at once. Stealth must be balanced against payload, speed against range, and advanced autonomy against the testing burden required to prove it safe. Nor does this program make pilots obsolete. Human aviators remain central to decision-making and judgment in combat. What the CCA does is shift its role. It removes the need to place a pilot in every aircraft, so those who do fly can focus on missions where human cognition, creativity, and survivability matter most. There are also real challenges to confront, and adversaries will certainly look for ways to counter this concept. In a conflict, the electromagnetic spectrum will be contested, links will be jammed, data denied. That is why the CCA is being designed with layered autonomy, able to degrade gracefully if communications break, act within preset boundaries, and rely on passive sensing when the air is saturated with interference. Integrated air defenses will remain lethal, but low observability and smart routing are only part of the answer. Survivability also comes from numbers, timing, and deception. In those scenarios, CCAs are the decoys and the risk absorbers, not the pilots. Looking forward, the path is both ambitious and measurable. Over the coming months, more flights will steadily expand the aircraft's envelope, from altitude and speed to endurance and maneuver. Reliability hours will be logged, autonomy will be tested in formation tasks, and each new scenario will increase in complexity. The next major milestone will be manned teaming trials, where a crewed fighter takes command of one or more CCAs in live airspace, rehearsing engagement logic under carefully controlled conditions. At the same time, competition continues, with Anduril preparing its prototype and both contractors delivering data packages to inform an Air Force production decision in fiscal year 2026. Alongside this, a dedicated unit will begin shaping tactics in operational environments, developing playbooks for launch profiles, communication discipline, and tasking flows that the rest of the force can later adopt. The right question to ask isn't just whether the jet can fly, it is whether the machine team can perform under stress, and that answer will emerge from the next year of testing. It also helps to place the YFQ-42A in context. Lower-cost attritable drones are already being fielded, lightweight systems launched from trucks or small bases, designed for swarming in large numbers. They play a different role, offering expendable presence at the cost of payload and survivability. Allied programs, meanwhile, are flying their own loyal wingmen, with Australia and the UK testing stealthy, long-range drones that emphasize modularity and Pacific endurance. These are close cousins to the US effort, proving that the idea is not unique but part of a broader shift. The story comes back to three pillars. Speed. This program has proven that combat aircraft can go from concept to first flight in little more than a year. Scale. Design choices are aimed at building numbers the Air Force can afford, not boutique prototypes that remain rare. And strategy. Machines are being brought in to shoulder risk and extend formations, allowing humans to retain decision advantage. Put simply, the fighter drone era did not start in a study or a slide deck. It has already left the runway. The YFQ-42A is the first chapter of a much larger story. The question now is how quickly the Air Force should scale. Should it commit early and begin buying these aircraft in hundreds, or should it move more cautiously, proving tactics before mass procurement? That is the debate already underway, and one where your perspective matters. What do you think? Rush to scale now, or wait until the playbook is hardened? Share your thoughts with us in the comments.